This has got to be one of the most anticipated aircraft additions recently, at least out of the models that are reasonable to expect. F-14's still a long way off, guys. In the coming IXVAS Strike update, the Northrop F-5A Freedom Fighter will be joining the ranks of top-tier battles in China. This video is brought to you by supporters like you. Thanks for helping me pay for my fucking rabbit chewing through my track IR cord. Fuck. You know what you did, don't even try and... This cheeky little bastard. So this is sure to be a slightly controversial video, but the F-5 is an aircraft that I've been incredibly excited to see come into the game, if for no other reason than it opens up so many dogfights for us to do, and the F-5 is an incredible dogfighter. It feels like a baby F-16. Unfortunately, this American aircraft will not be coming to the US tech tree this patch. We've had that confirmed, and I am salty about that. Not mad, just salty. Know the difference. The F-5's development was slightly different to aircraft that had come before it, in that it was a private venture by Northrop to create a new fighter before a contract had been issued. The design focused on low cost, ease of use, and maneuverability at the expense of range and endurance, and advanced radar and long-range radar-guided weapons. For the mid-1950s and set to enter service in the early 60s, this was uncommon for US fighters, most of them larger, heavier, and more expensive multi-role designs like the Phantom. Headed up by Edgar Schmood, the lead designer behind the P-51 Mustang and F-86 Sabre, both highly successful fighters, the project focused on creating a low-cost, nimble support fighter that could supplement more advanced yet heavier aircraft like the F-4 Phantom. Initially based on a Navy requirement for a fleet of aircraft that could operate off of small escort carriers, the twin-seat prototype N156T would go on to become the T-38 Talon, a trainer still used to this day, which replaced the older T-33 Shooting Star. The Day Fighter prototype, however, was met with scorn by Congress, who were more focused on high-technology multi-role fighters like the F-4, and saw the F-5 as quite flimsy and somewhat useless. What ended up saving the project was the Military Assistance Program, which called for the US to supply low-cost combat aircraft to its less developed allies in order to combat Soviet expansion. Northrop's design was perfect for this, with test flights in 1959 showing fantastic reliability and ground attack capability that surpassed that of the F-100 Super Sabre. It could be equipped with two AIM-9P Sidewinder missiles, those are the export models, along with two 20mm cannons and pretty much every ground-based weapon in the US arsenal. Its two J-85 engines had a higher thrust-to-weight ratio than the J-79s of the F-4, and the small, light airframe allowed for much higher maneuverability than any other aircraft the US had at the time, Air Force or Navy. It first mass-produced in 1962, the F-5A equipped the Royal Norwegian Air Force in 1964, and went on to serve in the air forces of more than 30 export customers, including Canada, who produced the F-5 under license as the Canadair CF-5. The US, while not intending large-scale operation of the F-5, did supply it to the 4,441st Combat Crew Training Squadron in April 1964, along with the 3rd Tactical Fighter Wing and 10th Fighter Commando Squadrons in 65. Under the Skoshi Tiger program, 12 F-5As were sent to Vietnam for an active combat evaluation in October 1965, where they proved highly capable strike fighters, although their short range necessitated aerial refueling to really get much out of them, which in turn would require modification. These 12 aircraft were redesignated F-5C to distinguish them, and this is where a lot of people get confused, thinking that the F-5C is a separate variant which was produced for the US to use in Vietnam. It was not. It was just a renaming of those 12 particular F-5As, which also received some small modifications. The US also operated the F-5 as an aggressor or adversary aircraft, given its similarity in performance to the MiG-21. Later succeeded by the F-5E Tiger II, which saw similar levels of success on the export market, the Northrop F-5 would serve as the basis for the YF-17, which would eventually become the F-A-18 Hornet, as well as the F-20 Tiger Shark, a capable lightweight fighter that lost out to General Dynamics F-16 Falcon. Now in War Thunder, the F-5A will only be coming to the Chinese tech tree, at least this patch, as it served with the Republic of China's Air Force for many years. It will not be coming to the US tree in any form this patch, and the F5A itself may not come to the US at all, just later variants down the line. The Taiwanese iteration of the Freedom Fighter does not come equipped with a radar. Later on the F5As did get a radar, but not these ones apparently. However, it does seem to come with AIM-9P3 missiles, not the base AIM-9Ps, which the F5As commonly used. You've also got a ton of air-to-ground ordnance on this aircraft. This will be the best air-to-ground platform China has access to currently, and will also be the first aircraft we've ever had that can carry all types of weaponry at the same time. I said something similar about the Buccaneer last patch being able to mount both bombs and bullpups alongside its air-to-air missiles, something no other aircraft can do. However, the Buccaneer has no gun armament, and the AIM-9Bs are pretty much not worth taking, as they take away 2 bullpups. The F5A takes it a couple steps further, allowing you to carry guns and sidewinders, bullpups, bombs, and rockets all in the same loadout. That's going to be amazing. Even if rockets aren't all that useful in top tier ground RB, they should be good for spamming at some Tunguskas from long range without wasting a bullpup. Unfortunately, you do not have a ballistic computer to help get those rockets on target, but it is nice to have the option if you just want to try it out. You've also got a staggeringly capable dogfighter. This thing will out-tonfight Mirages, MiG-21 MFs, and MiG-19s pretty easily, and even the Draken will find it no easy prey. It does lack missiles, only carrying 2, which will make it somewhat situational and air-realistic, but if you do manage to get into a 1v1, you are going to have a good time. All in all, a very nice aircraft for the Chinese trade, a new top-end fighter and attacker for them, if unfortunately not one of the domestic designs that really could and should be added. Let's just hope they're on the horizon for the next patch or two. Like I said, however, I am kind of salty that the US will be missing out on this highly anticipated US aircraft, at least this patch. Obviously this has been done to kind of promote the Chinese tech trade. This is a sought after aircraft and I'm sure people will grind through China for it and perhaps grab a premium, like the F5. Not that one. But that also means that anyone who was keen on this highly anticipated US aircraft and doesn't have the Chinese tree researched or isn't able to grind out a whole air tree in just a month or two, is going to miss out, at least for now, and it also means that this aircraft will only ever be used against the US, just something else the US can't contend with at close quarters. If it were given to the US, it would help to offset the lack of dogfight capable aircraft on that team. Nothing American can really dogfight at top tier at all, and don't expect the F8 Crusader to change that because its flight model on the dev server seemed far from finished. With some real dogfighters accessible to the American players, however, that's players of the American tree, not players from America, you'd actually have a real threat to the MiG-21 in a low-altitude, close-in dogfight. Now, the Phantoms aren't arguably the best jets in the game, even still, but they just cannot tonfight MiGs or Mirages. It's like P-47s fighting BF-109s and Yaks. They're still very good, equally capable, just in a different way. Now, it is true what many people have pointed out, America doesn't need the F5, they already have the arguably best top tier fighter and the best top tier ground pounder with the A7 bringing Mavericks this patch. But this is why I'd like to advocate for the MiG-23's edition, so that the Soviets have something to match the Phantoms in PVR, while the US gain a nimble dogfighter to match the MiG-21s in close quarters. As for ground attack, I don't think many US players will take out the F5 when the A7 exists in the tree anyway. For the Chinese, it's good to have, even though you will have to up tier your Type 99 to use it with, and for America, it's just kind of redundant. Now, there are a few other reasons for the US not getting the F5A that people have been bringing up, the first being that the US didn't use this variant, which is just not true. I don't know where Gaijin is getting that from, it just isn't the case. They supplied it to multiple squadrons and used it as an adversary aircraft which F-14s and F-15s trained against. And the US may not have used the F-5A in combat, technically, if you want to count the F-5C as a different aircraft. But like I said, the C designation was literally just to distinguish the 12 aircraft combat testing in Vietnam. Not a single aircraft was produced as an F-5C, they were modified with aerial refueling equipment, but they were already redesignated F-5Cs before they got those modifications. They were identical F-5As, just with a new designation to set them apart. And after the 6 months of flying combat sorties in Vietnam, they actually went back to being designated F5As again anyway before they were sold on to export customers. I think either the Philippines or South Vietnam, I forget. But saying that the US shouldn't get the F5A because they didn't operate it in combat and only export customers did, even if it weren't for the F5C being the same aircraft, still isn't an argument. You know who else that applies to? Italy, with the G91R4. They never operated that model at all, but Portugal did, so the Italians have it as a premium. None of the Japanese post-war jets ever saw combat, the Sabre, the T2 and F1, F104J and EJ, but that doesn't mean that all of those American jets shouldn't have been given, obviously. The CL-13s didn't see combat, at least not with Germany, and the US Harriers didn't. Britain's GR3 did, but not the Aviate-A or C, only in American service the Harrier 2, the Aviate-B. Now that is well and truly a different aircraft. There are a whole load of vehicles in game which that applies to, and that's not even talking about aircraft like the F-11F, which never saw combat despite making it into service. That's different there, there's no other nation who could get that either. But that just isn't a good enough reason, in my opinion, to deny America this aircraft right now. They could really use it, even though they certainly don't need it, and it would bring about a welcome meta change where the MiG-21s would be forced to play slightly differently than just sit on the deck and wait for the Phantoms to come down at them, and they can beat them in close quarters, where Sparrows and such don't really play any effect. Now, we have had it confirmed that the US will receive their later variant of the F5, the F5E Tiger II, at a later date, which is good. And we may also get the F5A in the US tree later on as well, in fact perhaps as soon as next patch. So this isn't going to be a lasting problem. Like I said, I'm not mad, I'm just salty. Gaijin might give us an F5C, although I've found no info whatsoever about any of the 12 F5Cs ever actually mounting AIM-9s, given that they were evaluating ground attack potential. And if the America gets the F5A/C with no air-to-air missiles, that would kind of suck. All in all, the F5A is a very interesting and highly anticipated aircraft. I am going to absolutely love it. After all, this whole Chinese versus America thing doesn't really apply to me anyway, I already have the Chinese tree grinded out, plus I'm in the content partnership program, so I could just ask Gaijin for it. I'm more getting second-hand irritated for you guys. Plus, having this American aircraft in a nation that solely fights America and not in the US tree yet, it just kind of triggers my autism brain. Anyone else? It is going to be a very enjoyable close air support platform, incredibly versatile, and an amazing dogfighter when you can get into those 1v1 scenarios. Really, it can beat anything, even a Draken, if you play it correctly. But it's not something that really power creeps the game, given that it has no radar warning receiver, no flares, only 2 missiles we already have, and only some ground attack ordnance which we already have. The variety is great, but it doesn't bring anything that necessarily power creeps the game. Now, hopefully this will come with some sort of hardpoint selection mechanic, as the newer menu for presets, while way better than the old one, is going to get seriously cluttered for aircraft like the F5, the A7 and the Su-17, the F4E, and the MiG-21 BEST if it gets its KH-66s with their multitude of different armaments. I've suggested a potential mechanic in the past whereby you click on a hardpoint in the hangar and it drops down a menu of all the ordnance that can go onto that hardpoint. You select one, it mimics it on the opposing pylon, and you create a loadout, and then you save that loadout you built instead of using the game's presets, which we are still missing a whole bunch of. That thing with the F5A being able to carry bombs, rockets and missiles and such at the same time. Yeah, the F4 should be able to do that as well. Hell, even the A1 Sky Raiders are missing a ton of combinations of their various ordnance types, which could be solved this way. Later aircraft, it's gonna get so much worse, so hopefully we get a mechanic like that very soon. Anyway lads, that is my take I guess on the F5A and the fact that it won't be coming to America this update. I don't like it, plain and simple. I think the US should get this aircraft, this patch. It would bring about a nice meta to have a good close-in dogfighter on the American team. But hell, maybe one of the freedom fighters might make it as a premium before the Tiger II gets added to the US tech tree. I'd be up for that. I think this type of aircraft makes for a much nicer premium entry to top tier jets than the Harrier does, for example. It's more usable given that it can actually dogfight very effectively, more useful given its ground attack ordnance, but either way, it looks as if we'll be stuck waiting to see what Gaijin decides in the future. I hope you have enjoyed this video. If you did, leave a like and subscribe. If you agree, let me know down below. If you disagree, go away, no one likes you. I'm just kidding. Please, if you disagree with me, let me know why as well down in the comments. Until next time, thank you lads so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the new update. Let's have a try of these things, because these are a little bit disgusting. So we're gonna have that little green box that pops up. We lock onto a target. Boop. Then we lock onto another one. Boop. Lock onto another one. Boop. And we're out. And there's 3 kills.